Hey, dreamers, welcome back to your Dream Coach podcast, the place where we turn big dreams into reality. And whether that means building a thriving business, creating a life of freedom, or just stepping into the best version of yourself. I'm Shayla Wey, and today's episode is a really special one because it's all about something that changed my life. Traveling to 40 countries before I turned 40. Now, before you think this episode is just a travel diary, stick with me because what I learned through these experiences not just only shaped my personal life, but it also helped how I approach business, leadership, relationships, and success. And travel really has a way of stretching us, breaking our old ways of thinking and opening up to possibilities that we never even imagined. And so in today's episode, I'm going to share with you how this goal even became a thing. And then my five biggest takeaways that I learned and lessons, I guess, too, where I learned from really seeing the world. Lessons that can help you, whether you want to travel more, you want to grow a business, or just create a life that feels deeply fulfilling. So buckle up because this is going to be a good one. Well, I want to start with where the goal even started, right? I mean, I've shared this with so many people. If you're, a friend of mine, or if you're in my family, you know that this has been something I've talked about for the last decade. And this is really special for me to release this episode on my 40th birthday because it is very much in alignment with how I've lived my life. And not only just how I've lived my life, but how I have lived my life by design. And when I was 29, my husband and I had an opportunity to go on a trip that I earned through a company I was working with at the time to Rome. And we were visiting a few places before we went to Rome. And so we were on the train heading to Rome when I heard a few people behind me talking about how they were really excited about checking off 20 countries before they turned 20. And at this time, I was 29 years old, and I was actually going to be turning 30 in Rome for my birthday. And I looked at my husband and I said, "Oh, I like that." And I started to make a list of all the countries that I had been to up until that point. And up until that point in my life, I loved traveling. That was always a huge part of, who I was. And I absolutely loved traveling, but I had never been as intentional at that point. And so I made my list. And at that time, it had been about 27 countries. And I was pregnant with my second baby. And so we were unfortunately not able to add more weeks onto that vacation to hit that goal of me being able to get to 30 before 30. But I left that trip feeling excited, fueled, and I had a new driven goal and dream that I really wanted to go after. And so the new mission became, once I turned 30, how can I create a life by design to get to 40 countries before I turn 40? And what I loved so much about having that dream, having that goal, is it allowed me to be so intentional over the next decade about financial goals that I had for myself, checking out different places that I had never seen and being really creative with how I could hit this goal around being a mom with two small kiddos, building my business, and everything, you have going on in your 30s, right? And so two lessons came from that. One is that just never underestimate how inspiring that you just living your life can really be when someone else hears it or sees it. Because those girls that were on the train that day, I ended up getting into a conversation, them sharing and me being at the right place, right time, them sharing that goal they had of 20 by 20 is what truly changed how I navigated the next decade of my life. How powerful when you think about that one conversation I happened to overhear on a train going from Siena to Rome could possibly change the direction of my life when it came to my travel and my goals and my dreams. The second thing is that there is power in having goals and dreams. And one of my favorite quotes is that the world needs dreamers. The world also needs doers. But what the world really needs most is dreamers that do. And for me, that was where I fully just felt like I ignited when it came to dreams and goals. And I have just loved reflecting back over not only the last decade, but the last 40 countries that I visited in my life today. And so today on my 40th birthday, I'm releasing this episode. And so please join me as I share some of my lessons from my travels. And I want to start with that. One of the most powerful realizations that I've had while traveling is that no matter where you go, people are people. People are more alike than different. And yes, we may have different cultures, languages, and belief systems, But at the core, we all want the same things: connection, happiness, safety, love. And I've been to so many different countries where people really just treated me with respect. I've had heartwarming conversations with strangers in various countries. And even though sometimes we barely spoke the same language, there was that level of connection. And I've been helped by people in local villages where I felt like I was completely lost. And what I have found is that kindness, generosity, and human connection exist everywhere. And when you start to see people through that lens, really, whether that is in business, leadership, or everyday life, you stop making assumptions about others and you start leading with curiosity and openness. And so, how does this apply to business and life? Well, if you want to build a great business, focus on connection. People don't buy from brands, they buy from people they trust. And if you want to expand your network, drop the fear of differences. The best opportunities come from unexpected relationships. And if you want to grow personally, seek out new perspectives. Every conversation has the potential to change your life. And at the end of the day, human connection is what makes life meaningful, whether you're in your hometown or you're halfway across the world. And let me tell you, no matter how much you plan, and things will go wrong when you travel. And my second lesson that I feel I've learned is that flexibility and adaptability are superpowers. Flights get delayed, luggage gets lost, maps sometimes don't even make sense. Language barriers can create hilarious misunderstandings. And at first, these things would stress me out. But over time, I realized that the more adaptable you are, the more enjoyable life becomes. Whether it's getting on the wrong bus and ending up miles away from where I was supposed to be, learning to embrace that instead of panicking, decided to go with it, looking at it as an adventure. And in some of these moments, I've discovered some of the most beautiful things, hidden waterfalls, things that I never would have ever seen. And isn't that how business works too? No plan survives exactly as you expect it to. Things shift, markets change, and strategies need adjusting. And how this applies to business and life? Well, if you can't pivot when things go as planned, you'll always struggle. The best entrepreneurs, leaders, and dreamers are the ones who know how to adjust. So instead of resisting change, embrace it. Some of my biggest business breakthroughs came from unexpected detours. Learn to go with the flow because often the detour leads you somewhere better than you imagined. And so success doesn't come from rigidly sticking to a plan. It comes from staying open, flexible, and willing to take the unexpected route. And I used to think that success meant owning more stuff, bigger houses, fancier cars, luxury purchases. But I have definitely learned that experiences matter, for me anyways, way more than things. And I learned that through travel. Travel changed that for me. Because when I look back at my 40 country journey, I don't remember things I bought. I remember what I experienced, whether it was watching sunrises, swimming in crystal clear waters, even just sitting in tiny cafes and people watching for hours. Those are the things that I've learned that will stick with you. Those are the moments that shape you. And so how this applies to business and life is don't just chase money for the sake of money. Chase experiences that make life richer. Invest in learning, travel, and relationships. When you invest in that, right? Invest in those things instead of just those material things. And in business, focus on creating meaningful experiences for your customers, clients, and team, and it will set you apart. And at the end of the day, experiences shape who we are far more than any physical possession ever could. And every time I traveled somewhere new, I saw life through a different lens. And so my fourth takeaway or lesson is that perspective shifts lead to personal growth. And being in different countries where you felt really deeply connected in the culture and, being reminded that we can rethink our priorities when you see different cultures, visiting even different villages where people had very little, but they were incredibly happy, made me question what success really means. And just seeing the relaxed pace of life in certain countries that just taught me that not everything has to be rushed. And the more perspective you expose yourself to, the more you grow. And how this applies to business and life is if you're feeling stuck, expose yourself to something new. It could be travel, but it could also be books, mentors, or even different industries. The way you see the world determines what you believe is possible. So change your environment and you change your mindset. And business success isn't just about strategy. It's about thinking differently than the average person. And so perspective shifts are what help you level up both in life and in business. And here's what's crazy is that the more I traveled, the bigger and smaller the world felt. The world is both big and small. And that's my fifth takeaway, my fifth lesson. Because when I think about bigger, it's because the more I travel, the more excited I am to explore even more places. And 40 is just the beginning. I can't wait to continue to see more of the world. But it's because the world feels bigger because I'm realizing there are endless places to explore. But at the same time, I'm realizing that the world also feels smaller because no matter where you go, you find those unexpected connections. I remember when I was in Thailand and I was at a full moon party and I ended up meeting somebody that ended up living on the exact same street as me. When I was in Africa this past summer, I was on a safari with a business owner that lived only 2 hours away from me that was looking for a business coach and ended up working with me and is still working with me to this day, where I help him and his law firm as they continue to build and grow. And so the more that I just started to think back to all these connections that I've made in my travels, the more that we are all more connected than sometimes we realize. And when you start putting yourself out there, whether it's through travel, business, or networking, you'll start to see just how many opportunities exist. And so how this applies to business and life is your next opportunity could come from the most unexpected place. So just stay open to those connections. The world is full of people who want to help you succeed. So don't be afraid to reach out and take action, because the more you put yourself out there, the more the world will open up for you. So my final thoughts and challenge for you is my biggest 5 takeaways from traveling 40 countries before I turned 40 is that people are definitely a lot more alike than different. Flexibility and adaptability are superpowers. Experiences matter more than things. Perspective shifts lead to growth. And the world is both big and small. So here's my challenge to you. What is one way that you can embrace adventure in your life today? Maybe you aren't goal driven by checking off countries, but maybe it's more adventures. As I go into my 40s, I'm really excited about creating intentional experiences with my kids and allowing them to work towards goals and them starting to see the world and having, goals and dreams that we go after as a family. And so I'd love to hear what some of your takeaways were from today's episode. You can DM me on Instagram at Shayla Wey Coaching and share your thoughts. And if this episode resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow dreamer. And remember, keep dreaming, but more importantly, keep doing. Until next time.